credentials.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. I'm going to present our research that was developed in the last years and that is now continuing in the ecosystem of innovation, the THE. Basically, what we have been developing in the last year is some sensors, intelligent sensors that could help clinicians and therapists and any other medical staff to manage and to treat neurodegenerative disease. Neurodegenerative disease includes a large portfolio of pathologies from dementia to Parkinson, Alzheimer, and so on. And numbers in terms of impact on the society are really impressive concerning the problems and the necessity to take urgent action to cope with these pathologies. Basically, there are some challenges that need to be addressed. From a medical perspective, we have that the early diagnosis, as we saw before in other applications, the objective diagnosis and the rehabilitation support are really important for clinicians, but at the same time it's important to understand how to support clinicians, so how to manage and to shape the healthcare services with the clinicians and the patients and all the stakeholders that are around the patients on the territories. So the reorganization, for example, of the diagnostic or the therapeutic pathway, it's an open issue for what concerns the use of technology in these fields, and also the possibility to have home monitoring systems or systems that can be used also in some other public spaces, for example, pharmacies, gym, and so on, could be some solution, could pose some challenges in this sense. From a technical perspective, instead, we have to consider how to go on to satisfy this kind of needs and requests coming from the clinical world, the health world. Recently, maybe you know that have been developed several solutions based on wearable sensors. There are a lot of papers related to the use of wearable sensors coming from the consumer market, smartwatches from Apple, Huawei, or other Fitbit. There is a lot of literature about the use of these devices that could be in some way integrated in some clinical pathway, let's say. But the point is that at the end, how the clinician can use this data, how can really generate value on that. We have reflected on this in the last years after also a number of experimentation that we did. And what we have, in some way, what we are trying to shape is that for sure we need algorithms that are, yes, innovative, but that can really give accurate information, precise, personalized data to the clinicians that can be used soon. It's sometimes difficult to think that patients can collect that data over 1 week, over 1 month, and then try to immediately generate some useful data for clinicians to be integrated in the clinical pathway. This is a step very difficult to do, which requires a lot of experience, a lot of experimentation. So this is a first point. The second point is that it's necessary sometimes for the clinicians to have soon immediate information, immediate output after the clinical visit, after the intervention, after the measurement that can be done everywhere. The third point is that sometimes new devices, new biomarkers could help maybe in addition to the common biomarkers that are already available. And finally, the infrastructure related to the ICT technologies, the use of technologies everywhere in rural areas or in other not so easy to reach territory could be another elements to solve. So based on that, we have tried to shape a possible solution that could address some of these challenges. We don't want to reject the idea to have long-term measurements for 1 day, 2 days, 1 week, 1 month, which for sure can give information useful 1 day. But we are trying now to have something which is much more concrete and immediate, using some structured approaches that can generate quickly and soon some information that can be really useful to the clinician soon. Okay? So say that we have developed a customized solution of sensors, which is a combination of bracelets and rings. We have basically developed all the electronics part from the hardware unit until the firmware and the package. This is a system which aims to identify the features of movement and correlate them to some neurodegenerative disease, as I'm going to show in a while. The idea is basically to start from the movement and then move also towards other physiological biomarkers that could come from other, for example, physiological phenomena, for example, from sweaters, from blood, and so on. But at this point, I will focus on the movement, which is something which is much more ready and much more tested in our lab. Here you can see some concrete customization, and we are developing a new series in the ecosystem, in the DE project, which is completely and fully wireless. This is, of course, the hardware is just a minor part of the system. The core of the system is the algorithms development, which is based on automatic extraction of features that are specifically related to clinical scale. And what we did basically is to develop an interface that is easy to use for the clinicians, in particular, in this case, for the neurologists, and that can facilitate the diagnosis and facilitate also the monitoring and the treatment. In general, the idea is to use a system that is integrated in a platform, which is something that we are trying to test. We have developed at the moment, we have tested at the moment 3 platforms, moving from Fireware until other IoT platform. We don't know yet which is the best, probably none of them, but we have them ready for experimentation. Our work that I'm going to explain is coming from a lot of collaboration in the last years with all of these hospitals. It's important, the connection with the hospitals, for understanding well this. And I'm now going to show a couple of cases that have been already consolidated. The first is the use of movement analysis with a specific structured framework of exercise and a precise structure of features to extract to correlate them to the clinical pathology. In this case, it's Parkinson. So this is a very lucky for us, let's say, not for the subject, situation in which which was published a few years ago. And it's about the identification of some hyposmic idiopathic subjects. They underwent to the specific protocol of UPDRS for Parkinson. This is because hyposmic idiopathic are those persons that have a percentage probability to have Parkinson. So the hyposmi is some way a sort of premarker. And in these patients, we identified one patient that actually had the same features of Parkinson patients. So we had an healthy subject that was very similar to the patients with Parkinson. And because of that, we started together with the neurology of Massa, Ospedale Apuane, some tests at Levodopa. We did also some tests with DAT scan. And actually, these tests, Levodopa and DAT scan, really demonstrated that he was a candidate of Parkinson. And actually, in that case, we demonstrated basically that some features of the movement classified with supervised learning was able to identify very early a potential patient, okay? This was for us a lucky case. Of course, it was unique. We need, of course, more experimentation in this sense with large-scale pilots about that. But it was very interesting. Said that we tried to extend a bit sorry, I'm too fast. Sorry. Okay, said that we tried to create a small group of hyposmic idiopathic, and here you can see how the features that we selected from the movement analysis and 3 groups, healthy patients, hyposmic idiopathic, and patients with Parkinson's disease, were in some way well clusterized using supervised techniques of machine learning. This is not, of course, significant from a point of view of the numbers, but at least demonstrated how, of course, we can distinguish the 3 groups with a certain accuracy. And for example, what we can do is to make a preclinical assessment of what could be the hyposmic idiopathic subject that could be good candidate of Parkinson. Going on in this direction, we continued to use these sensors to really digitalize the UPDRS, which is the clinical scale of Parkinson. And actually, it was interesting to see how, with these sensors, we can reach some possible distinction of the severity, different grade of the severity of the Parkinson disease. Based on this experience, which was positive, then we identified other cases that we like to experiment in this THA project. The first user case is to continue with Parkinson's disease. The second one is to identify also new biomarkers that could be much more efficient, accurate, and precise of the previous one. And finally, to identify also new protocols that could improve this capability of distinguish among the different groups in neurodegenerative disease. So the first case is, of course, the demonstration that the protocol that we identified with our sensors can be used to digitalize at all the UPDR scale. So in the end, this is what we are trying to aim in THE project. So really demonstrate and validate that the UPDRS part 3 actually, so the movement, the motor part, could be fully digitalized with some wearable sensors customized on that application. The second case is about the identification of other biomarkers. We have performed some signal analysis, advanced signal analysis, identifying and measuring the entropy, which is and to study the entropy, also with a multi-scale approach. And basically, it was very interesting to see that this analysis, in terms of signal processing, was really effective in distinguish patients and with Parkinson and subjects. And this is very promising for us because it's an interesting biomarker that can facilitate, can be a nice tool for the neurologist during the clinical visits or during the monitoring also at home. Because in the end, this is a very simple parameters that can be extracted also after few exercises that can be performed everywhere else at home or in hospital. And this is just an example to show how the main basic exercise of UPDRS are acquired. And the third case that we have been already implementing in some experiments with the Neurocare Association in Pisa is and also in France at the University of Costa Azzurra, is the use of motor cognitive dual tasks. So the idea is to use tests that can put at the same time cognitive and motor load on patients. This is because the cognitive load can in some way reduce the capability of the brain to adapt, to execute better the motor movement, enabling us basically to better measure the motor decline. And this is also an interesting approach that we are still working on. In literature, most of the experiments are based on the gait analysis during having a cognitive load. We are also adding the upper limbs, which we think it's very interesting because the manipulation or the fine manipulation can bring a lot of biomarkers that could be connected to the cognitive load. And these are now some preliminary results that have been already published and are really promising in this direction. So the conclusion is that, and I'm almost on time now, the idea is to basically to identify precise protocols, precise markers that can be directly linked to the pathologies and linked to what the clinicians need to understand. And in this way, trying to customize the algorithms and the way to collect and use data. Thank you.
Thanks, Filippo. Are there any questions for Filippo? No, I have a curiosity for you, if I may. Does it make sense to combine all your markers with other types of markers, like genetic ones, like blood types? Is there any feasibility in this?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, this is something that we really like to do, but sometimes we need a project and we need partners, above all clinical medical partners. We have tried to combine, for example, wearables also with sleep analysis for Parkinson's disease, so combining hyposmic, idiopathic, and sleep disorders. But this is something that should be in some way implemented. We have some proposals submitted, but we are waiting for results. Of course, the genetic approach is another large and very interesting field for predicting Parkinson and also other neurodegenerative disease, and for sure it's something that could be really combined. Above all, considering that if the movement biomarkers could be effective, this could be a really challenging in terms of impact, because movement analysis is very ecologic, simple to measure, and also cheap, not expensive. Okay.